Hi, welcome to Morning Coffee with Pizzan Academy. I'm Deanna, and today I want to talk to you maybe about a little bit of a touchy subject. That is, what do you do when your kid comes home from school and you know what they're learning isn't factually correct, but that's what's assigned? In 1980, Howard Zinn published his book, A History of the American People, and it was all a buzz. And for 39 years, it has become a staple in some classrooms about American history. The problem with that is that he's not always completely correct. And the big issue is the way he defines his history, the sources that he used. And we've already had a couple videos about sources and how do you know the truth? Well, you go back to the primary sources. That's not what Howard Zinn did. There's a particular era in the early 20th century, mainly the 1930s, where he talks about some things and he's basically using some pretty anecdotal evidence that aligns with a viewpoint he wants to make. We know this happens, right? We see those commercials, 9 out of 10 dentists. Well, you line up 30 dentists and you pick the 10 that agree with you, right? And then there's your statistic. We can bend statistics. I've done a lot of statistics. I'm a social scientist. And so I've worked with statistics, and I know that I've read some pretty shoddy research studies that tweak statistics. So if you want to know something, then in history, you go back to the primary sources. If those aren't available, using one or two anecdotes as a microhistory is perfectly acceptable. It's great. You're telling the story of one or two individuals. But to then go and generalize about an entire feeling of an entire population, like what Zinn does, saying that the African Americans really didn't care about World War II, the outcome of it, that is actually incorrect. He's taking actually some secondary sources to make this point, and it's not correct. So what do? Your kid is learning this, and it's touchy. If you tell them to go to class and you show them sources and you spend time with them and you work with them because you want them to learn actual knowledge, not kind of twisted knowledge for whatever reason, right? And then they go to the teacher and they raise their hand. Well, that may not be well received in the classroom. Challenging teachers, whether it's middle school, high school, or college, is very, very difficult. I remember as a kid, I was in elementary school and we were learning about the dinosaurs. I was in Sunday school and we were learning about the sort of origins of the world from a Christian point of view. And so in Sunday school, I raised my hand and I asked, who came first, Adam and Eve or the dinosaurs? For, a 7-year-old child, that's a normal question. And I was kind of put in the corner and told not to talk like that. That was wrong. And so you don't want to have your child, go through that sort of experience where they're going to be ostracized or treated differently or looked upon negatively in any way, shape, or form by the teacher. Some classrooms are really open for questioning. The teachers are really excited when kids want to learn more or if they have a difference of opinion. I always loved that in my class, and we didn't always agree, and that's great because you know what? Then you get dialogue, and that's when the learning really becomes fun. But not every classroom is going to be open to that. So what do? Well, what you can do is you can sit down with them and you can go through sources together. That could be a fun activity. And you can look for some primary sources and you can compare what you find to what they're learning. And then it's delicate. You can tell them, this is what they're teaching in school, and that's okay. And even schools aren't always 100% correct. Even when we watch the news, it's not always 100% correct. People make mistakes. That's okay. So when this happens in the class and you have worked through and talked to your child about the differences, what you can do is just tell them, I want you to go into class and just do the assignments, use a critical eye. If you're given a writing assignment, you can bring in an alternate view or opinion based on your sources, cite your sources, that sort of thing. But you're going to have to tell them that the school, this is the way they're teaching it. Now, this happens a lot. So I'm not talking about it something that you just disagree with. For instance, in a literature class, if they're only teaching modern literature, but you think they should be teaching the classics, that is something that maybe you can talk to the teacher about, but that's not something that you're going to tell your student that is factually wrong. And what I'm talking about here are things that are factually wrong that you can back up with sources. And so it is a touchy subject. So it's best to just work with your student, and then it's a good lesson in life of, I hate to be sounding like my mother right now, but that grin and bear it phrase, where you just have to go in and kind of swallow it, but know that you know the truth, and you're walking away more educated. So again, sources really, really matter. And if you do have a good relationship with the school or the teacher, and they are, for instance, if my child was being taught Howard Zinn, I would actually probably talk to the teacher about it and point out things that are factually wrong, and offer, like, maybe you can bring in some other readings, some other points of views, some primary sources to show different things. And that's a really good way for the teacher to kind of go around. I used to do that when I would teach anthropology. There were things in the textbook that were very swayed from a very particular lens. And I would bring in things that would counter that lens, just to, one, bring in differences of information, but also to let the students use their critical thinking skills. Definitely if it's high school, and even with some middle school students, then you can talk about critical thinking and you can show them different sources and you can have them assess those sources. It's not a fun situation to be in, but I think that there are ways that you can deal with it. And most importantly, what you want to do, even more so than trying to correct the school or correct the teacher, is to make sure your kid is getting the actual truth about history. So there are two options in these situations. If the teacher is open and you know them, then you can go and talk to them and approach them. But if they're not, that idea of just grinning and bearing it, but making sure that your student actually knows history and the facts based on sources, then that's what you have to do. So with that, I'm going to go make sure I have my correct sources. Have a great day. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe, like our videos. Our other social media channels are in the description below. Have a good one.